Welcome to the Rinkside Rundown podcast, showcasing the incredible women's hockey players from around the world through compelling interviews and discussions alongside your host, Chris Sinclair. Hello and welcome back to the Rinkside Rundown podcast. Today, I'm joined by Hannah Clark. The Oshawa, Ontario native is a goaltender and the newest member of the University of Minnesota. Hannah, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. This is, we talked a little bit off air there, but really been looking forward to this conversation. It's been a great time connecting with you prior to you being on the episode, so I'm excited to learn a little bit more about you here. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. I love that. Okay, so a natural starting point for any one of these conversations, especially the first time you're on the show, won't be the last, but the first time you're on the show, let's get to know, like, what was it about hockey? Like, just not even just goaltending. We'll talk about that in a moment, but what was it about hockey that you loved so much right from the start?
So my dad, kind of like my dad's side of the family, played hockey growing up. So my brother and I got into skating 3 or 4 years old, pretty much as early as you could. And then I think it was around 4 or 5 years old, I started playing house league hockey. And then I started playing goalie. Well, I tried goalie when I was really young and I just hated it. And then my mom was like, no, just try it again, because my dad was a goalie. So 6 or 7, I tried it again and I loved it. And then I really just wanted to be like my dad. So that's kind of why I started hockey and goalie.
So what was it though that what weren't you a big fan of? Was it were you a big fan of hockey in general, but not a big fan of goaltending? And then what was it about goaltending that you didn't like specifically, at least at that moment, at that point in your life?
I don't remember personally, but from what my mom has told me when we've talked about it, she said that I was kind of bored. Apparently it was a pretty boring game, wasn't getting much action. So I was kind of just sitting on my butt in the net. But then I guess the next time I tried it, I was a little bit older, there was a little bit more action, and I just love the aspect of competing and you can be the backbone of a team.
Yeah, I guess that's actually a really unique perspective, right? When you think about goaltending, you go from nothing at all to everything, and all the pressure is on you to make sure you make those saves. So early on, I could see why it's you know what, I'm standing around here I'm not doing anything, and then all of a sudden it's it's gone again. Is that kind of maybe part of kind of what you were saying about your kind of perspective on goaltending early on?
Yeah, I think I was just so young and I just wanted to be, because when you're young, there's so much energy, right? If you want to be doing stuff 24/7. So I was probably wishing that I was skating around the rink. But then when I got older, I kind of realized hey, this is kind of cool. It's different. And there's only one of you, right? Well, there's 2 per team, but especially at that age, when you're in the net, you're the only goalie. So it's just kind of special.
So did you it sounds like it was goaltender or a bust for you. I mean, at the end of the day, you didn't necessarily like it early on, which is fine, and I get that. But it sounds do you ever think back and say maybe, as much as you wanted to be like your dad, do you ever kind of think about, maybe I would have loved it even more if I had played a different position? Or do you regret or maybe wish that you had focused more on another position than goaltending?
That's a good question, because I have thought about it before. And I actually played ball hockey earlier this summer, and I was out, and it just felt so weird, even though it wasn't ice hockey. But I don't think I would have loved being a D or a forward any more than I do goalie. And I think just the connection I kind of had with my dad, and he coached me growing up, I think it was just kind of natural how it all happened. And so I'm actually still pretty close, good family friends with the coach that coached me in that first game I played as goalie. Not when I was super young, but the one where I actually realized hey, I like this. And so it was kind of him who was hey, she did pretty good. If she loves it, she can just do it for the rest of the year. and I did it for the rest of the year. And I still have like it's like this gold stick signed by like everybody on that team. And it was like the MVP stick, and I got it that year, like my first year goalie, and it's still like hung up in my room. So that's kind of like when it all started.
When you, we're going to get into a bunch of different things and I can't wait for that. But when you look at that stick, what does that mean to you?
I think it just makes me think back to like when I first started, because like a lot of the time I think, especially like older, you start to think of everything going on right now, and you don't think about like everything you've kind of done, or like where you started, like why you started playing hockey in the first place. So I just think like when I look at it, I'm thankful for like the opportunity that coach gave me, because it's house league, right? Like they usually want everybody to try being goalie, but this guy who's like family friends, like still plays hockey with my dad, like beer league, he like gave me the opportunity, and he said like, listen, you can just keep doing it if you love it. So I think if I never got that opportunity, then like maybe I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, like, do you still use that stick as motivation now for like remembering, especially going from I'll play goal, but I'm not happy about it, to now being obviously as successful as you've been? Do you still use that stick as some sort of I was going to say measuring stick, not to be cliched, but do you use it to kind of motivate you to, when you have those obstacles, when you have a bad game, when you maybe, don't feel like you're where you want to be in terms of your own performance? Do you kind of use that stick as a reminder of what was?
Not necessarily the stick, but I actually like I work with a sports psychologist who's also like a hockey goalie, and he always trying to kind of tells me like just think of why you started playing in the first place. So I try to think back to like obviously like the time that I got that stick, and just like how much I love just being with people at the rink, like kind of being like the backbone for my teammates and just like enjoying the game. So I try to think a lot about that.
That's fair, yeah, and obviously, as you've shared a few times here, family has been, especially your dad, has been
Yeah.
a real impact on your career. Could you just talk a little bit? I think one of the things that, and I'll say this until I'm blue in the face, but one of the things that people may not realize is that it really does take a village in terms
Yeah.
of, I mean, any sport for sure, but
Mhm.
especially when we're looking at a sport like hockey, where it's expensive to get into, especially as a
Yeah.
goaltender too, right? Like
Oh
that's
yeah.
yeah, exactly, right? Like that's a significantly more expensive position to be playing, but it's already a really expensive sport. That's a barrier to
Yeah.
entry. There's also the commitment to driving you to and from the rink, and that's just your home rink, another barrier to entry. And then also having to figure out how to get you to and from away games, another
Yeah.
barrier to entry. Could you, maybe share a little bit about the impact that your family had on you? And then, what that's meant for you, especially now that you're starting this exciting new chapter.
Yeah, honestly, like they've done so much for me. I probably don't thank them enough. Like I should probably thank them a lot more, especially like the past 3 years, like driving back and forth from Etobicoke. It's like an hour from Oshawa or sometimes more. So they definitely sacrifice so much, and just obviously the money spent on this equipment and everything. Like I'm so like grateful that I've never had to really worry about not having the right equipment, or not having like just anything, like not having anything that's not perfect for me to perform at my best. Um, I don't know. It's why I get like emotional talking about it, because like I'm so close with my family. Like even my little brother, he comes to watch me a lot. So like I love having him there. And then just at like all the international competitions, like my parents took the time off work to come and be there. So they mean a lot to me, and I'm so thankful that they've just kind of always been there.
Well, consider this at least one step in the right in the direction of saying a big thank you, because I think, again, like you said, the fact that you kind of got a little emotional there, I think, is like
Yeah.
as indicative of just how much of an impact they made on you, and obviously the relationship that you had with your dad in terms of the inspiration that he was for you. But it like I said, it really does take a village, right? And I've
Yeah.
been I've been lucky enough to see you play live, which was an incredible opportunity for me.
Mhm.
Surprise, I was actually at one of your games. Didn't drop that little nugget before filming here. So
Do you remember what game it was?
yeah, it was in Ottawa. It was one of your games in Ottawa.
Okay.
Yeah. I was blown away, and this is a great segue into the Etobicoke Dolphins
Mhm.
program, because watching the Etobicoke Dolphins play, they play in the OWHL, which is a league many may not know a lot about, but
Mhm.
many need to learn a lot more about, because there are tremendous, and it goes from coaching. We're going to get into Joe Bukovich, who I'm fortunate enough to know as well as
Yeah.
obviously you, who has had a tremendous impact as a coach for a number of players. But just the level of play, the level of compete, the level of professionalism within
Mhm.
the OWHL in general, but especially specifically the Etobicoke Dolphins. And I
Yeah.
wanted to know, again, as someone who's seen them play, and I, I, it was not a close game, and it was very dominant performance by the Etobicoke Dolphins, and that's something that is um, indicative of that kind of program. Um, speaking of that program, like
Yeah.
just being a part of that program, what was it like for you? Like both, let's talk about both on and off the ice, just being a part of such a successful, such a an impactful program. What has that meant for you?
I think like just playing there, like I was fortunate enough to play there for 3 years. So it definitely like helped me grow as a person and athlete like tremendously. Like I don't think I would have gotten that type of growth anywhere else and just like learned what I have and like gotten the opportunities that I have like without playing there. And just having like the resources we do, like our physio, like she's like family now to me, like our assistant coach, like head coach, like Joe and Blake, they're awesome. Like there's just no other team or like program that kind of compares. Even with like sponsorships and like the golf tournament we do, like there's just so much that like comes with playing there. And like not to mention just the compete level and the people. Like there's just so much talent like all on one team. I think like every single year I was there wasn't like one player who wasn't like an incredible hockey player. So which is like so special as a goalie because it's just sometimes practices. Actually, most of the time the practices would be where I got like my best work in that helped me become a better goalie.
So what went into that? What went into you kind of mentioned that, being around those players, being around that program, obviously, I mean, I can only assume. I'm not an elite athlete like yourself, so I can only assume. But being around people like that, people like not even just on the ice, but off the ice, just these incredible minds around hockey. What has that meant for you? Let's talk about, because we're going to talk a lot about your on ice stuff, but let's
Yeah.
talk about you off ice. Like, what has that meant for you off ice in terms of that sort of elevated experience, and from the people around you? What has that meant for you?
I think especially my first year is kind of when I started to learn a lot because I was like fortunate enough, like Joe gave me the opportunity to come play junior a year early, which is like my goal for a few years before that. So I was playing with, I think the oldest girl on our team was an 03, and then the rest of them were mostly 04s, and there was like five, like kind of like OG 06s who we played together for 3 years. But just being around like the older girls, like you just kind of saw like leadership. Like we had phenomenal leadership in that first year, which kind of like they passed the torch in a way that was like really special. And I remember like all of the 06s got really close with a lot of the 04s. And I think like our captain, McKenna Van Gelder, she plays at Cornell now. she was just a phenomenal captain, just someone who would always like work so hard, like on and off the ice, just like a great person. I've actually got to skate with her this summer, but I haven't seen her in a while. So it was just kind of cool. Like you keep those connections and you just remember like, hey, she was such a great leader. And you just kind of carry the stuff that you see that makes people good leaders and good teammates. And it helps you grow as an athlete. So I think that was the like most special thing about playing there for like all 3 years.
And just kind of quickly here as well, what does it also mean to you now? Obviously, you're moving on from the program. As I had mentioned, you're going to Minnesota. What does it mean for you to also be looking around and saying like, hey, that teammate went there, that teammate went there, and like just kind of knowing that all of these incredible players that you became so close with are now continuing their hockey career collegiately and are either waiting in this upcoming season to be successful, or that you're also looking at players that you've played with previously who have already entered their collegiate career, started their collegiate career, and are being successful. What does that mean to you to kind of like, does that light a fire in you?
Yeah, like, well, I obviously, I just want nothing but the best for, like, all my former teammates, like, whether I played with them on Etobicoke or, like, Ontario, Canada, like, whatever. Like, 2 girls I played on Team Canada with are coming to Minnesota with me this year, both from, like, BC. So I can't wait to, like, we're all living together, so it's going to be so fun. So I'm, like, and we've been talking, like, we're like, oh, like, let's go, like, let's get fired up, like, let's win a championship. So kind of just have, like, those former teammates, like I know we kind of have the same mindset and we're so excited to come. Like that gets me super fired up. And then knowing that I get to play against some old teammates, like pretty much like almost every school, I think I know at least one person or have like skated with one person. So I think it's really cool how it's kind of like there's so many hockey players, but it's also such like a small world. So it's definitely exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you couldn't tell, Hannah has the biggest smile on her face as she's, describing her excitement about both obviously playing with, but also against her former teammates. And I think that's incredible. And, when you look back on your career with the Dolphins, you had the numbers, I don't want to focus too much on the numbers, but I do want to say, you had, and not because I don't want to, but I know that it's about the team. It's not necessarily about your own results. But I do think there is a moment that we need to celebrate and recognize just how incredible you've played. You had an absolute monster year with the Dolphins. I looked at the stats and I was like, I got to refresh that because there must be a typo there, because those are incredible numbers. And again, I know it isn't about the numbers. It isn't about the stats. Obviously, that helps you progress in your career, but that's not something necessarily. But just look up Hannah Clark's stats because they're next level. But I do want to say, as you, sort of approached this past season rather, like did you approach it differently in terms of when you look at your stats, like you just continue to build and continue to have successful season over season? How did you approach this past season in order to see the success that you did?
I think it kind of hits a little different because it's like your last season of minor hockey. So I definitely tried to keep that in the back of my head. Like, don't let a game go to waste. Like, try to just give it your all every single game. Like, obviously you want to do that like throughout your whole career, but like just knowing like I'd be going to college after that. Like, I obviously wanted it to be a special season. And then something my dad told me, like since I was so young, like probably like 5 or 6, and I've just always like kept it in my head. Like I'll say it to myself in the net, is just give your team a chance to win. So that's something that I always try to do every game. So I didn't really change anything. I think from like prior seasons, I think I just wanted to go out and like make the most of every single game, knowing it was like my last year of minor hockey.
Okay, and what did you um, learn about yourself, especially as you've mentioned the impact of this being your last season in minor
Mhm.
hockey? Like, what did you learn about yourself throughout this process? And you can look at it as a micro in terms of this past season, or as a macro in terms of just your time with the Dolphins. Like, what did you learn
Yeah.
about yourself that you're gonna look to translate to your time at Minnesota?
I think there's always like kind of like good and bad experiences. So like there's times where I would get like not I'd never get like too nervous playing or anything, but I'd get kind of like freaked out with like just other stuff going on that didn't really have like too much to do with hockey, like in the game, like kind of just like the outside stuff. And like sometimes I'd get so focused on that like I wouldn't play my best hockey, or I just like wouldn't feel like myself like on and off the ice. So I think just like whether it's practice, game, lift, like I just want to go have fun next year, like not worry about any external stuff. Like it doesn't matter like what kind of skate it is, or if it's a big game, like just a league game, like it doesn't matter. I kind of just need to just treat everything the same and just go compete and not let like when I'm in the net, I'm in the net, I'm playing hockey. It's fun and just not care about anything else. So I think that's kind of just my biggest thing, like just like kind of simplify everything and not get worked up over anything else.
Do you, and this is actually, thanks for setting me up for this one. Nice
Mhm.
assist you got there. But what kind of impact do you think having a head coach like Joe Bukovich has had on you? And I want to hear, obviously, on ice is the, I think, probably default that everyone
Yeah.
would be expecting. But I think also off the ice, because my conversations with Joe have been very, like, it isn't just about the on ice performance, is about
Mhm.
really connecting with you. Could you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about what it meant to you to have a coach like Buckfitch?
Yeah. I think just from the beginning, like I had so much like just respect and like gratefulness for him because like I wouldn't have been playing junior the year early if he didn't believe in me. So just from the start, like I just wanted to prove to him like, hey, like you made the right choice. Like I'm gonna win you some stuff right now. Like I was just so excited to be a part of the program and playing for him, and like his pregame, postgame speeches, just like the things he'd say, like they kind of stick with you. Like there's coaches that'll say like the same things, and it's like okay, whatever. Like heard that before, but there's a few things like he said that kind of stick with me. Like the one was like never too high, never too low. So like if you win a big game or you win a championship, like yes, celebrate it, but don't let yourself or your ego get so high that if something happens, you don't play like your best, you don't like crumble. It's just kind of just like find that middle ground and like stay there. And then he just talks a lot about like being humble and just like thanking the people around you. Like he's always telling people to make sure you like thank the staff, like thank our trainers, our physio, or photographers. So he's kind of a special person who like cares a lot about others, and like we butt heads a lot. Like we like through the 3 years like we were there, we had like some pretty big arguments and stuff, but I always just had so much respect for him as a coach, and like I just always wanted to win for the team and for him. So he's just a really good person, and like I still talk to him like today, even though I'm not playing for him anymore. Like this summer, like he cares about people, like not just as like kids that like play for him. He always would be like, "Oh, you guys are like my daughters," and like I don't know. Some people doesn't think don't think he means that, but like I texted him this summer. I was like, hey, like I got the opportunity to do like these skates, and it was with like the top like OHL draft picks from this year. He was like, and I was like, yeah, like come watch. But I was like joking because it was like an hour away from where he lives. Then he just showed up and like watched like 2 hours skate with my dad. So it was just really cool for him to do that. And like whenever I tell him about stuff like that, he just gets so excited for me. So I'm happy I can still like he's still a coach I can kind of reach out to if I need something or just want to tell him something. So I like thankful that I got to play for him for sure.
Yeah, a lot of it's always great to hear those stories of, it's not just on the ice, it's off the ice as well, right? Where
Mhm.
it's the impact that they had on you as a person, and the relationship that you end up building, especially with the coach. Like you said, sometimes you're gonna butt heads, but it's like when you
Yeah.
have a great relationship, there's nothing better than like you can butt heads, but you can also come back and say like, hey, listen, I value you. You had a huge
Yeah.
impact on me, right? So,
Mhm.
um, and speaking of impacts, as you looked at your career, or as you've progressed through your career, you've also had the opportunity to represent Canada, which
Yeah.
is absolutely incredible. And I just wanted to hear a little bit more about what that experience was like for you. And I always default to like, what was it like on the ice? But I also really want to hear, like, just for you personally, like, what was it like getting that call? And like, what was it like
Yeah.
to like just be there? It doesn't necessarily just have to be the on ice stuff is the on ice stuff, which is great.
Mhm.
But it's like it's also like what did this experience mean for you, and how do you think it shaped you as a goaltender, especially as you're continuing your career at Minnesota?
So the first time like I actually like officially made a team was 2 summers ago, I think. It was like my minor year, and like I thought I had an awful camp. Like I was stressing. I was like the night before, like so one of my teammates, like Reese Logan, she's going to UMD next year. Like we were both at the camp and we were both like, oh my gosh, like we had awful camps. Like we were like so scared for the next day because we're gonna get told if we made the team or not. And then long story short, like we both ended up making the team. And it was nice because she was like one of my best friends. We played it on Topico for 3 years together, but yeah, I was so nervous. Like I've never been so scared in my life. And then once you like they tell you you made the team, like just like so much relief and like just thankful that they believe in you, right? Like even if you felt like you didn't perform your best. I felt like I did fine in like the skates, but then the games I felt like I didn't do like the greatest. But yeah, just from that, like I was kind of so thankful that they just like gave me a shot. And then from there, like I just wanted to prove like, hey, like I deserve to be there. Like I'm gonna show you. And then fast forward, like we we played in this, so it's kind of like a story to it. Is like I was the third goalie as like there was 205s and then I was 06, and then so I was like the younger one. Like I think I was kind of just there for experience, and I got to play an exhibition game against Finland, which was really cool. And I think we won like I don't know how much we won. We won, but I don't really remember. But I ended up getting a shutout that game, which was like I was so happy I just got the opportunity to play. And then we were gonna play like a series against the U.S. And then they said they were like, "Okay, like listen, like we'll let you play Finland, but you're probably not gonna play against the U.S. But you will get to back up a game." So I was like, I was fine. Like I was just so happy to be there. Like I did not care, and I still got to skate with the goalie coach like in the mornings and stuff. Who I also like really like a lot. His name's Gord. He's a great guy. But that was another thing too, is that you just meet so many great people. Like when you get to do stuff with the national team, like so many coaches and people. But what happened was I got to go in. It was like the second game, no, the first or second game of the series. I got to go in and play part of the third period. Then we went into overtime. Then we went to a shootout. We ended up winning in the shootout, and then they gave me the third game after that. So I kind of earned a spot to play. And then when I got back with the Tobico, like after all that was done, I just had a really good year, and then I got the opportunity to be like one of the goalies that played at Worlds, which was like 2 years ago in Sweden. So yeah, that's kind of like the story of like kind of how all that like went down and how it all started. So
And how do you feel like those experiences have translated to your game? And again, we're going to get into it in just a moment, but um, heading to Minnesota, like, how do you take what you've learned, both on and off the ice? Because off the ice, I think, is just as valuable as on the ice. How
Yeah.
do you take those experiences and translate them now as you are looking to start your collegiate career?
Well, I think especially like from 2 years ago in the summer, like I'm kind of put back in that position, right? Like my goalie partner next year is a senior, so I kind of have to earn. Like if I want to play, I have to show like, hey, like I deserve this. Like I'm put back in like that kind of like underdog position. So I think I can just think that, hey, like I've been there before. I was there with Canada. I was there with Etobicoke, and like my first couple of years, so my goalie partner was also a lot older than me. So I kind of just take what I learned from those and just like compete as hard as I can, try to earn my spot.
Yes, and you will. And speaking of Minnesota, you chose to go to Minnesota, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. Um, could you like walk us through for the rest of us who have never had to experience the opportunity to select your university or
Mhm.
your collegiate career, what went into your decision to go there as opposed to anywhere else? But also, I always like to throw this, especially for Canadians, like why NCAA as opposed to what is now known as U Sports.
Mhm. So NCAA in general, I think like it just became a dream when I was like really young.
Mm.
And one of my mentors, her name's Cassidy Sove. She played at Ohio State for 4 years and then Clarkson for her 5th year. Like we have the same goalie coach now, so I've known her for I think like 5 or 6 years. My dad told me this, so I never like knew it, but she played Whitby Junior, and I like grew up playing in Whitby until I switched to Etobicoke. So apparently, when she was playing Whitby Junior, my dad like lifted me up onto the glass and was like, "Look at this goalie! Like she's going to Ohio State," and I was kind of like, "What? Like I want to be like that." So I think that's kind of where
Mm.
the NCAA came from. And then as for Minnesota, like I always wanted to go to like a Big Ten or like a bigger school where like kind of the athletics or just like hockey in general was like the sport. And my biggest thing was like I wanted to go somewhere where a lot of Canadians or like kind of people in general don't really get the opportunity to go. So that's kind of what made me pick it. I guess it's far away from home, but it's like it's kind of a special opportunity, and like hockey's huge there, like it is like here in Ontario. So that was like kind of the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is that it might be easier for you to transition to from a very hockey enthusiastic market to another
Yeah.
very hockey enthusiastic market. Just to kind of wrap up your collegiate career, sorry, you're just starting it, but this part of the segment rather.
Yeah.
Do you like what are you most looking forward to in your time at Minnesota, and what are you looking like how are you looking to kind of maybe challenge yourself or push yourself or elevate yourself as you look at this next stage of your career?
I think in general, like I'm just kind of excited for a fresh start. Like I played for the same team for 3 years and I learned a lot. It was great, but now I'm like kind of ready for the next step. Like new shooters, new coaches, kind of just like new everything, new gear. I'm so excited to get. So my gear's so beat up right now. But in general, like obviously have like goals. I talked to like the girls in my yearboat were like, hey, like we want to win a championship. So I want to obviously strive for that and like help my team do that in any way we can. Um, that's obviously the big goal, I think, for like every college hockey player. Like you want to win a championship, but I just want to grow as a goalie, like mentally, physically, as best I can, and then just like off the ice, like I am pretty interested in like medicine. So, and there's also like hospitals on campus that I can volunteer at and things like that. So, I'm excited to see where like the education part takes me when it comes to that. But hockey, I'm kind of just excited for everything.
And now, a word from our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by sports nutritionist Melissa Buffunos of MB Performance Nutrition. As a former competitive hockey player turned nutritionist, Melissa's mission is to help the next generation of hockey players optimize their diets and health so they can perform their best both on and off the ice. Ready to dominate on the ice? Melissa's new course, The Hockey Nutrition Blueprint, is available now. If you're serious about learning how nutrition can impact performance and building actionable nutrition strategies based on your unique needs as an elite hockey player, learn more and sign up at melissabufunos.com/course. That's MELISSABOUFOUNOS.com/course. And make sure to use code Rinkside to save $50 off the regular price. Thank you to Melissa Bufunos for sponsoring this episode. And now, back to the show. I love that it isn't just about hockey for you.
Yeah.
Right? It's about the off-ice stuff. It's about, pursuing something that you're also passionate about. Obviously hockey runs through your blood and you're really enthusiastic about it, but it's nice to have that sort of that passion off the ice. And speaking of that and kind of tying it in here, thanks again for the assist on the segue here. But now that we have the PWHL, right? We have this professional women's hockey league that has seen tremendous success in its inaugural season. There's a lot of buzz going into the second season. Knowing that you have that to look forward to, and I bring this up because traditionally women, unfortunately, when you looked at what was next for you after college was, I guess I'm going overseas or I'm falling back on the degree that I have. But now knowing that you have this professional league, yes, it's only going into its second year, but we've seen so much success and enthusiasm around it. What does that mean to you as a player, knowing that there's another avenue for you that doesn't involve you having to go overseas, not to take away from that, but to be at the top tier, the best of the best? What does that mean for you personally, and as you look to continue your hockey career?
I think it means a lot too, because growing up, you want to have something to look up to, but there was really only the NHL for me, when I was really young. So I think it's special that a lot of girls can look up to that now and think wow, I can actually be a professional hockey player in a big league, kind of like the NHL. And for me, it obviously just makes me want to work even harder. I obviously want to play there one day. I think most hockey players do now, females that see the success. I've gotten to go to a few games in Toronto and it's just been awesome. The atmosphere is crazy, and I've actually gotten to do some scrimmage skates and then just skill skates with a lot of the PWHL Toronto girls this summer. And the talent, especially in those scrimmages, is just awesome. And I just love being kind of in that circle, with the best. So kind of just something I want to work towards. I want to be around that all the time.
Okay, so I'm not going to let that little tidbit fall by the wayside. You had the opportunity to do some scrimmages. What was that? What was it like? Especially again, as someone who unfortunately has spent the majority of your hockey career thinking there's nothing necessarily that would be next for me after this, but I'm gonna put in everything I have, but it's probably gonna end after college, or I'd have to go overseas again. What was it like for you to you're skating with PWHL players? What does that mean to you? How exciting was that opportunity?
It was so cool. So the guy who runs it, his name's Ray. He does his hockey company is called Speed. It's in Toronto. So he kind of runs it. He calls it the Speed Cup. So there's two teams. The teams switch kind of every week, and it's 3-on-3 or 4-on-4. So both times I've gone, it's been 3-on-3. So it's it's tough when you're a goalie and you're playing 3-on-3, but it just means it's a ton of work, a ton of shots, which is just awesome. And they compete. It's not 3-on-3 where you just kind of dilly-dally, do whatever. They compete it's a real game. So it's awesome.
All right. Well, we're as we wind down here, once again, Hannah, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you have an off season. I say you have an off season. let's be honest, you don't really ever have an off season. It's just you're not playing games all the time necessarily, but
Yeah.
there's still a lot of things that you have to be doing. So I just want to say thank you once again. But we're going to move into what I have called or dubbed the it's kind of become a tradition here at the
Mm.
Rinkside Rundown podcast, and it's a scientifically proven test to get to really know Hannah Clark. And I always say this test was put together by the crack team here at the Rinkside Rundown podcast, which is really just my dog Isaac and myself. We go over these, we spend a lot of time, we mull over what's the best kind of question. So we have probably 8 or 9 questions for you to really get to know Hannah Clark. Are you ready to take that test?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, perfect. I'm super stoked about this. What we're going to start off, and this is going to go like up and down. This is going to be like super serious. This is going to be super fun. We're going to start off with something a little bit maybe more serious. And I want to know, what are you most proud of from this past season?
That's a tough one.
One of the things, anyways.
I think just the first 2 tournaments. Like we won the first 2 tournaments of the year. So the Stony Creek one and then the Kitchener Waterloo. But the Stony Creek one probably because it was like 0-0 in the semifinal, and it went all the way to a shootout. And I had like 50 shots that game. Like it was just crazy game. And then we ended up winning that 1-0. Then we went to the final and we won that game 1-0. So it was just like kind of a gritty tournament team win. And it's kind of when our like Etobicoke team like first really came together. So I'm really proud of that.
I mean, that's definitely something to be proud of for sure. Absolutely. You've obviously, I've mentioned just how, especially this over your career in with Etobicoke, your game has progressed and your game has elevated, and you've become even more incredible than the previous season, which is already an amazing bar to hit. So you've had a lot of success personally. But could you talk a little bit about how would you describe your style of play for fans who haven't yet seen you play, but absolutely should be paying attention to you moving throughout your collegiate career and then into the PWHL? I'll just say that.
I think I move well and I'm really positionally sound, but a lot of the time like I can be like very athletic and quick when I need to. So it's kind of hybrid. Like I can do kind of like a little bit of both, like when it comes to like being technical, but then also being athletic. So kind of a mix.
Okay, fair. We had mentioned the so-called off season that you're a part of. What does your off season look like?
Just like lifting and skating every day, pretty much. I also like volunteer at like a nursing home, so I do like stuff outside of hockey, but I make sure like almost every day except for weekends sometimes. Just skating as much as I can. Like I go down to Toronto a lot, like now that I can drive myself, I don't have to ask my parents all the time, but I go to Toronto a lot for skates, and then just my gym fitness garage is in Whitby back home, so just kind of those 2, and then work with like my sports psychologist like kind of every other week.
All right. And what would be your go-to pregame meal?
I just like simple like pasta.
Pasta, chicken, that sort of thing, or just straight up pasta? And what
just
kind of
straight up pasta? I think just like gets the job done. Like it's fine.
All right, gets the job done. She says,
yeah.
Gets the job done. I love that. Okay, so during the season, who owned the dressing room music and what was played most often? Do you remember?
The girl I mentioned earlier, Reese Logan. So she was kind of like the DJ the whole year, and I think like most of the time, like kind of getting dialed in, like it'd be like a lot of rap and then like some country every now and then for more like practices.
Okay. And speaking of music, if you could listen to only one song for the rest of your life, what would it be? And I always put this caveat: you do not have to like it doesn't have to be playing all the time, but if you're like, yeah, I could go for a jam right now, like this has to be the song that's played.
Like, I thought about this question because like I thought you were gonna ask this question, but like I don't have one, but like throwbacks just gotta get me fired up all the time. Like whether it's like pregame where I'm just like driving, like I just love like throwbacks, like kind of like 2000s, like anything like that.
Do you have one that you kind of like like, do you have like is it just a playlist that you play, or do you have one where you're like, that's the one, like there's a playlist, but that's the one I'm looking forward to most on that playlist?
Yeah, I'd say just like a playlist. I ain't gonna just shuffle it. Like anything kind of like hype, like throwbacks. I just love that.
All right. Throwbacks are good. Okay. What is something that still remains on your bucket list?
I just want to travel. Like ever since COVID, like I haven't been able to travel too much, except for like obviously like the big hockey tournaments I've gone to. But there's like a couple places I want to go, like Greece, like Paris, Italy. Like I love food, so I think like those would be some places with some really like good food. But yeah, definitely just travel.
I like though that you had mentioned that your go-to pregame meal was pasta, and like Italy is on that list, so it only makes sense that would be a place that you'd want to go, right? Where better could you get the most amazing pasta in the entire world than where it was made, right? So I guess I shouldn't be surprised it was on your list. What's something that people may not know about Hannah Clark?
I play guitar, so I played guitar since like, well, I don't even, maybe like grade 6 or 7 is when I started, and I kind of like taught myself off of YouTube and like got pretty good at it. So that's something I like to do kind of in my free time.
Okay. Do you have speaking of go to pregame meals, do you have like a favorite song that you play?
Like just on guitar, like in general?
Yeah.
I like playing Fast Car by like Tracy Chapman, or like Luke Combs. Luke Combs has a version out that's really good, but that was like one of the first like kind of finger picking songs that I learned to play, and it's like pretty easy, but it kind of like impresses people a little bit, so I definitely like that one.
Yeah, you say it's pretty easy, but I look at the tabs and I'm like, I'm out. I'm not going to do that one. That's fantastic. And lastly, what is something that motivates you and inspires you? And you can look at that either or, professionally and personally.
I think just kind of growing up and like watching like how my parents have been, like kind of watch them with like other people, and like how they like kind of raised me and my brother. Like they're always just talking about just like kind of being a good person and like being kind. And the same, I think, just goes throughout like our whole family. So I think I always just want to try to be a good person, like when it comes to sports and like other things. Like I know it's kind of basic, but I don't know. I think that's something that I kind of keep close to me because it's something I've always been kind of told growing up. So it doesn't matter if people like don't treat you the best, just kind of say, let them do what they want, and just always try to be a good person.
I think we need more of that. So that is not maybe a more basic answer. I think that's something that we all should aspire to. And speaking once again about being a great person, is that, again, you took the time out of your busy schedule to make some time for me. And I just want to say, as we wrap up today, how much I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I can't wait for people to hear more about you. I can't wait to cheer you on in Minnesota. I can't wait to have you back on the podcast as soon as we can possibly make it happen. I can't wait for that. So Hannah, thank you so much for this. It's meant everything. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been really cool for me. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. And there you have it, folks. For Hannah Clark, I'm Chris Sinclair, and this has been the Rinkside Rundown podcast. Cheers.